Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have a very interesting episode for you guys you want to stick around for, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now, there's no question whatsoever that we are in the era of player empowerment in the NBA. Players today wield so much power than they have ever done in the past, right? I mean, it's not even funny. And with the recent drama with the Brooklyn Nets, we can point to that as the latest example. In my opinion, I think it would have been totally unheard of for an NBA superstar to essentially walk up to his owner, demand that he be traded, or he would need to fire his general manager and head coach. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I think that would have been an abomination, and it would have been something that no player, I don't think, would have dared to do, even the best player in the NBA. But today, it's commonplace that we have players who can basically go around and do what they want to do and basically give their teams that they're playing for, their respective teams, ultimatums. And Kevin Durant, with the situation, Kevin Durant, who was basically I just recently referenced, he's just the latest example of the type of play that these powers wield. You can look at the situation with Ben Simmons. You can look at the situation with James Harden. And to a certain extent, you can look at the situation with Kyrie Irving, who could just simply not show up to work for 2 weeks because he just felt like it and not give the team any heads up about it, right? The things that we see in the NBA today could not have happened 20 years ago. It would have just been impossible. Which leads me to a fairly recent interview that David Falk, who's the former agent of Michael Jordan, and at one time arguably the second most powerful man in the NBA behind David Stern, he recently had a sit down on the Colin Cowherd show. And during his sit down, he was basically explaining where things went wrong. And he was basically taking us behind the curtains and explaining to us how Michael Jordan went about, doing his business with the team that he played for. In that case, with the Chicago Bulls. And let me quickly say this before we get to this audio. This is not a shot at LeBron. He does mention him briefly, but we're not talking about LeBron James. He does mention him briefly. But before we get into this audio, this video is brought to you by our sponsor, Aura, who's also the official sponsor of the T-Wolves. Do you know what the fastest growing crime in America is today? It's identity theft. Imagine trying to log into your email only to see that your password has been changed. Then you start getting weird notifications from your bank and credit cards, only to find out that all of your personal and sensitive information has been totally compromised. If you think it can happen to you and your family, just know that in 2020, over 49 million Americans were victims to identity theft, costing them a combined $56 billion. That is why we are excited to partner with Aura, who's the sponsor of this video. Aura is the #1 identity theft and financial fraud protection. Aura monitors the dark web and alerts you if any of your passwords and accounts have been breached. And funny enough, after using Aura, I discovered some of my credentials were floating around in the dark web, and the app showed me exactly when and where the breach happened. In addition, Aura allows you to set spending alerts, and they'll notify you of any suspicious transactions. Aura is 4 times faster than any of its competitors in alerting you if someone is trying to open a credit card or obtain a loan using your name. And remember this, every 14 seconds, someone becomes a victim of identity fraud. Don't let it happen to you. Now click the link in the description and try Aura for free for 2 weeks and see if any of you or your family's personal information has been compromised. Start your free trial at aura.com/dreamerspro. And when you try Aura, by using the link in the description below, also know that you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do is play what David Falk had to say here. I want you guys to take a listen to his point, take inventory of the points that he's making, and then we're going to come back and unpack this. Take a listen to that.
I'm a big fan of LeBron's. I think he's earned his due. He's earned his props, if you will. But there's an expression in the law that a lawyer who represents himself as a fool for a client. I don't think agents would make it very well as players in the NBA, and I don't think that players necessarily are qualified to be general managers. So I think there needs to be more of a line drawn. And I don't think LeBron's helping himself, truthfully, in doing that because he's at the tail end of his career. He wants to win a few more rings to get in the conversation about who's the GOAT. I don't think you get in the conversation until you win at least 6. And I think he should have a professional general manager work with him to create a team around him that can win a title.
I could be naive here, David, but I don't think. When I think of Michael, I don't think he wanted to control personnel. Again, I could be totally naive, but Michael gave of himself to Phil Jackson. He trusted Phil. It's well documented now, David, that Phil came to him and said, Michael, you're the best basketball player in the world. You've got to trust your teammates a little more. And Michael just gave himself to Phil. I mean, that's not easy. So that my interpretation is Michael didn't want to control personnel. Am I right or wrong on that?
I don't think Michael felt the need to control personnel. And unlike LeBron, Michael had the exact opposite dynamic. He had a general manager, Jerry Krause, who believed that players didn't win championships, organizations won championships. So he sort of went the other direction of what's happening today and really didn't give a lot of input to Michael. Now, the owner did. Jerry Reinsdorf, is like one of the great owners in sports. He's bright, tough, but very bright, fair. He solicited Michael's opinion on big things. But as I said, I think that even ex-players, if you look at ex-players as general managers, a few of them have done really well, like Danny Ainge, Danny Ferry, Larry Bird. But this doesn't automatically mean if you played basketball that you're qualified to be a general manager.
Now, here's the fact of the matter. When you leave it to players, you quickly realize that they aren't good at building teams, or they aren't as good at building teams as they think that they are. This is just the fact of the matter. Teams are good at building championship teams, not the players, and we have a plethora of evidence for it. Teams have, in my personal opinion, the mechanisms in place to go about building championship teams. They have scouting, guys that go out there and scout guys. Obviously, they have the facilities to give guys workouts. They have tape that they can analyze tape. Obviously, they have their experience to lean on. Guys that have been doing this job, they're not just guys that are just walking off the street, coming off the street with man of the street logic and then going up there trying to do their jobs. These guys usually have tenure in the NBA and they know what they're doing. And they have coaching staffs in place to evaluate said players, right? So they have all of these different things and obviously things that maybe you and I are not privy to that they have in place to be able to evaluate talent. And obviously you have guys that can go out there and, who can study the draft, know what type of players to draft. All of these different things in place, to be able to go out there and build the best teams possible. And the teams, and we have many examples where we have teams that have actually been able to do their jobs and the players do their jobs and they've been absolutely successful. You can point to examples of, the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs have an organization where you have Greg Popovich, you have the ownership, and then they have their system in place where they can go out there and get certain type of players to keep injecting into their system, and therefore they're able to win championships over a long period of time. You can look at David Robinson, you can look at Tony Parker, you look at Tim Duncan. These are all guys. You can look at Manu Ginobili, you can look at Kawhi Leonard. These are guys that they went out there and got. Brought them through their system, and then they were ultimately able to win championships. So you have the San Antonio Spurs. Of course, you have the Chicago Bulls, Jerry Krause and these guys who David Falk alluded to. Of course, you have the Miami Heat with Pat Riley. He did it as a coach and also as a team president. You have him. You have the Boston Celtics. He mentioned Danny Ainge. You have them. They also won a championship under his tenure. Danny Ainge doing his job, going out there building a team. Obviously, you have the Toronto Raptors with Masai Ujiri, one of the best team executives in the NBA. You have him, and of course, you have the Golden State Warriors. These are examples that we can point to where you see teams building championship teams and not the players going out there and doing it. When you have players, when you leave it to the players, you usually get a situation like you have in Brooklyn. Why? Because players are usually going to pick people they like and people they already have relationships with. These are the guys that they're going to want to play with. They're going to want to play with people that they get along with. Whereas teams, they're going to be picking players that they believe will have the best fit together. Then they try to put those guys together to go out there and win games. And I'll give you an example of this. Practical example of what I'm talking about. Look at the the Los Angeles Clippers, right? And I believe they have some of the smartest people in the business. Of course, you have an owner who's the richest guy in sports, on all of sports, $100 billion guy, and Steve Ballmer. Of course, you have a consultant in Jerry West, who's arguably probably the best team builder in NBA history behind the Lakers, Shaq, and Kobe. Of course, He was there with the Golden State Warriors as a consultant, and now he's there with the with the Los Angeles Clippers. And you have Lawrence Frank, who is a savant, right? And if you look at the team that they put forward, I'll give you guys an example. Number of years ago, Paul George and Marcus Morris Sr. got into a physical altercation on the basketball, like a shoving match. Now, if you would think about it, you're like, I don't want to play with a guy that I had a physical altercation with. But you have a team. So if you leave it to the players are like, no, I want to play with people that I'm cool with. But if you leave it to the team, they're like, no, we think these guys match up well together. And then they're going to come together and then they're going to hash it out and become teammates, right? So teams are good at putting this stuff, putting teams together because they leave all of those things behind. They're focused on putting out the best product to win games, products, a product that can attract, fans to the game that will go out there and buy merchandise and all of these different things. So the evidence is this. The point is this that I'm trying to point to. It seems as if, based on some of the things that David Falk said and the history and the evidence that we have, it seems as if Michael Jordan understood this. Michael Jordan essentially allowed his team to do their job. And instead, what he did was he focused on his job, which was bringing the most out of the guys that he was with on the court. He still respected his head coach and Phil Jackson, and he trusted him. He trusted the system that he put forward and said, okay, listen, I'm going to give your system a shot. Initially, I think he was with Doug Collins, right? And he was winning all of these scoring championships. And Phil Jackson came to him and said, no, I have a different philosophy with the triangle, Tex Winter. Let's try this. And Jordan was open-minded enough to say, okay, listen, let me give this a shot. And by the way, when Phil Jackson became Michael Jordan's coach, he had never won a single championship. So this notion that players are only going to listen to guys that won rings is total hogwash. Because if Michael Jordan was humble enough to listen to a guy that never won a championship, then who are these guys talking about? I'm only going to listen to a championship coach. When Phil Jackson became the head coach of the Lakers, the Bulls, he was an assistant coach. Then he became the head coach, and Michael Jordan listened to him, the best player in all of basketball, listened to him. So you have examples of where Jordan essentially allowed these guys to do their job. It just seems like Jordan innately understood this. And he also understood something else, I believe, Michael Jordan. And I think is one of the reasons why he wasn't so transfixed on this thing about power. Jordan understood that the greatest form of empowerment to players is rooted in winning. Because winning opens up a door for a whole bunch of opportunities. Let me give you guys an example of what I'm talking about. Do you think anybody will be listening to Draymond Green if the Warriors were one of these teams that were floundering in the NBA, not even making it to the playoffs? Do you think people really be sitting down there listening to Draymond Green? They'd be like, bro, your team sucks. Nobody wants to hear from you. But because Draymond Green is on a championship winning team, he has the ears, he has the audience, he has the eyeballs. Because why? People want to be associated with the winners. And Jordan understood this. If you want to be remembered, win. If you want to have endorsement deals, win. That was Jordan's only formula. And to this day, his teammates are still remembered, not for the money that they made, but for what they were able to accomplish. That's the fundamental difference. And I think Jordan knew this. Jordan's player empowerment was simply winning. And this translates to other forms. In other forms of life. We talk about business. The most successful businesses out there in organizations that I've studied is where you have the smartest people being allowed to do their job. And the more autonomy that they have, the more creative that they're going to be. This is just a fact of the matter. Go look at Google with Sergey and I forgot the other founder's name. These guys understood their skill set. They said, we're good at this. I'm good at this. We're going to do this, and we're going to get somebody that's seasoned to run the company until we build up those skills to be able to run the ship. They took their ego out of it and they said, listen, what we got to do is surround ourselves with as many smart people as we can, and then we're going to get the results that we need. You don't have to have the answers to everything. Just because you're the best NBA player in the world does not mean you're the best GM. And Michael Jordan has proven that, because in his transition into a team owner, you can see the difference. It's not a shot. This is just the reality, right? This is just the reality. And I think that was the point that David Falk was making towards the end of that audio. So I thought it was quite interesting, and what he said got my creative juices flowing. So really, the question to the audience is this: do you think that players should just step out of the way and let teams do their jobs, and they should do their jobs on the court, or do you think, listen, no, players should have a more involved role. They should be more involved with the team decisions that teams are out there trying to make, and they should be able to have a say-so on a lot of the moves that they make. Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. And oh, by the way, let me say this quickly again for the people in the comment section. They may be sitting up there twerking it up already. Let me say this. Just because he mentioned LeBron's name, this video is not about LeBron James. Let me say it once more. This video is not about LeBron James. I'll say it once more. This video is not about LeBron James. Please, let's keep it to the topic here. We're talking about player empowerment versus players that allow teams to do their actual job. That is the topic of this video. Please spare me with that nonsense in the comment section. I want to say it once more. Thank you very much. Catch you on the next episode. Peace.